Much of CSS is pretty straightforward, and for the most part my students have no trouble applying font styles, margins, padding, color, and whatnot to format their page content. Where my students usually have problems is when they reach that point where a number of key elements need to come together so that they can create solid CSS-based layouts that work consistently and across all popular browsers, like this page right here, which is an entire CSS formatted page with no tables, using floating div tags here, which I'll talk about in a short while. So in this section I pull everything together you've learned about CSS thus far. I add some additional information and then cover the important topic of creating these types of CSS-based layouts. In the past, web designers used tables or frames to organize their content on a web page. In contrast, a CSS page layout uses cascading style sheets in place of traditional HTML tables or frames to organize the content of a web page. The basic building block of a CSS layout is the div tag, which, as we've seen, is an HTML element that in most cases acts as a container for text, images, and other page content. When you create a CSS layout, you place div tags on the page, add content to them, and then position them in various places. However, unlike table cells, which are restricted to existing somewhere within the rows and columns of a given table, div tags can appear anywhere on a web page. You can position div tags absolutely by specifying X and Y coordinates, or relatively by specifying their distance from other page elements. Creating CSS layouts from scratch can be a little bit tricky because there are so many ways it can be done. You can create a simple two-column CSS layout by setting floats, margins, paddings, and other CSS properties in a nearly infinite number of combinations. Additionally, the problem of cross-browser rendering causes certain CSS layouts to display differently in different browsers. Now, up to this point, we've been working solely with AP div tags. The AP means they've been absolutely positioned. One problem with this approach is that their positions never adjust on the page according to the size of the browser window, like this example is doing. This is a relatively positioned page layout. More on these types of relatively positioned layouts later in the tutorial. To start our review of this element positioning in CSS, we'll need to revisit the box model, specifically the two different display methods, block or inline, which will be the topics of the next movie.